He's the person who coined the term serious leisure. He'll talk to us about that. Please, Dr. Stebbins.
Thank you, Paul. First thing I tell people who ask me when they're retired, and sometimes even before, well, what is leisure? And I could give a definition, but I think at the moment we'll just leave the common sense definition in people's heads and not get into the more technical conceptual details about that question, about its answer. But what is useful is to get people looking at the enormous range of activities that constitute leisure. And I immediately say, have you seen on Wikipedia the list of hobbies? It's worth going to have a look at. It's amazing how many are there. And when I first saw it, I was a bit amazed at how many more I could add to that list. So it's not a list that conforms to the more theoretical side of the study of leisure, including the serious leisure perspective, but at least it talks about activities that people do. So the next thing I do is say, bring up on the website, www.seriousleisure.net, the diagram on the serious leisure perspective. And there it is. And what I do is I start down that list. Let's start with casual leisure, simply because it's what the rest of it is not. And it's what most people do, however. And that includes play. And I think I'll leave you with that. And I don't mean child's play. Doodling with a pencil is play. When you're bored at a meeting or something. Relaxation, taking a nap, sitting back and watching the dog run around the yard. Passive entertainment. Television, the world's leading casual pleasure activity. Active entertainment would be a game of chance game of cards, playing poker, but you're no expert, playing Monopoly, on and on. Sociable conversation, getting together over coffee somewhere for drinks at the pub. Gossip fits there. Gossip's lots of fun as long as it's not about you, the speaker. Sensory stimulation, a bus trip to look at the beauty of the Canadian Rockies or the inspiration of the ocean would be examples. Casual volunteering, somebody's got to take tickets to the door for the high school play. Doesn't require any talent, but it has to be done. Somebody's got to pick up the furniture for the Salvation Army. It takes some brawn, but it doesn't take any expertise. Pleasurable aerobic activity is walking, amongst other things. And it can be pleasurable. All of these activities are enjoyable. So that's important. Let's go to the other side of the chart, over to serious pursuits. And just under serious pursuits on the left, serious leisure, finally. Not casual, because serious leisure is leisure we have to, as it were, work at. If you're going to be a good amateur musician under art, you're going to have to practice the violin or the trumpet or whatever. And you'll get better at it. So you'll see some sense of career, self-improvement, and ultimately, and this is one of the essential features of serious leisure, a sense of self-fulfillment and well-being as a result of that fulfillment. So that can happen in the fields of art, can happen in science. I cut my teeth on this subject studying archaeologists. Later, I rounded it out by a look at astronomers and the immense commitment and fulfillment to and from those sciences, which with all amateur activities has a professional counterpart. these pros show what what devotion to and a lifetime of work in a field results in. So there's no doubt that the sense of being an amateur is a sense of being in a social world with people who make their living, some kind of living, not always a great living, doing that same activity because they're doing it more or less full time. Sport, it's obvious. Entertainment, I studied stand-up comics and entertainment magicians as two examples of that field. Moving across to volunteer, six types. Popular is people. If you're volunteering in a nonprofit organization, you're likely working with people, being on the board of directors or being a host for organizational events is part of volunteering with people. Idea-based, that's where I would look for volunteers in religion and politics. Material, the handyman is the ideal typical material-based volunteer, unless he or she has become a business person in the area. But most handymen do it because they like the work. Floral, taking care of gardens, knowing which weeds to pull, nothing else, but also how to protect against bugs and watering and pruning and on and on. Funnel, that's where this SPCA works. They use enormous numbers of volunteers to help with the animals. And environmental things like trail maintenance, which we know in the Rockies here for hikers. Over to hobbyists. The difference between a hobbyist and an amateur is that the hobbyist doesn't have a professional counterpart. So they do different things where professionals don't usually, only rarely if ever arise. So collecting plates, collecting dolls, collecting stamps, of course, making and tinkering. Now we're talking about creative activities such as macrame. Building furniture would be an example. Then activity participation is an activity that would be really a sport probably, but there's no professional. Cross-country skiing is an example. And so I studied barbershop singers as activity participants. Sports and games, again, that's obvious. A lot of sports and games too just don't have professional counterparts. There are pros in chess, apparently. I didn't know this, but you might be good at checkers or dominoes. As far as I know, there are no pros there, but you can get damn good at doing it and enjoy it and enjoy the competition. Liberal arts pursuits is my term for the reading hobbies. And some people read a lot. They read all the works that an author wrote, for example, a novelist, or they'll follow a genre of literature. So read as much as they can in the way of Elizabethan plays. But they can read in science, they can read in history, and develop quite an expertise from all of this knowledge. And then over to devotee work. This is a newcomer, but it's basically serious leisure gone to work. In devotee work, is like serious leisure, but it can be, the participant gets paid. As I say, it doesn't great pay necessarily. In art, there's the starving artist, even though the evidence is today that most people that enter the arts professionally do so eventually end up with a half decent living. And if it's a popular art, then you would have some quite substantial living. Consulting is a liberal profession, but on a one-to-one basis. And what's amateur or what's serious leisure about this is the attitude and the sense of personal fulfillment that comes with pursuing that activity. But it starts as amateur in the pre-professional stage of education. So your med student, law student would be examples of pre-professional amateurs learning to become pros. And but they've discovered already what enthusiasm, what excitement, what fulfillment lies in the field that they eventually hope to make a living at. Skilled trades. A lot of carpenters, for example, don't do much that's it's skilled, but it's very routine. And it's, it could be seen as, it is a serious work, but something like stonemasonry or furniture making are, when they become remunerative, are also exceptionally attractive as devotee work. So, and then finally, small businesses. Some of them, like cake decorating, like making cookies and that kind of thing, that are sold and become, the archetypical typical example is beer making. And people start out, usually guys, I guess, making beer. They want to have a good beer. And then, hey, this good beer might sell. And then the shoe has dropped. So then they want to see if they can make some money doing it. And sometimes they can. I think we all, if we thought about it and asked about it, could find local breweries where beer makers started as hobbyists. So, and then converted it to devotee work. But serious leisure for which you get paid is fundamentally the definition there. So when I meet people who want to know about leisure, I send them to the website on Wikipedia, and then we sit down with this chart and talk. And my client, as it were, and I do this voluntarily, is keen on some activities and couldn't care less about others. So I match the activities, that person's personality, talents, tastes, qualities like that. And then sit back and say, well, here's how you get started, and keep in touch. So that's it.